breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Yo, was P Diddy an informant for the FBI for all these years? Me and the brother Jesse Weber from Law and Crime, we're going to discuss this. Sit back with, there's going to be FBI ex-director on here to break down the making of a federal informant and what they can, can't, and do. So make sure you watch this so you can understand why it's not worth it to get involved in a life of crime. Now, before we begin, if you subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're not subscribed, subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, follow me on Instagram, it's on the screen, and my Cash App is on the screen. I don't care if it's $5 or whatever. Show some love. Let's keep this thing moving. All right. Yeah, check, right? We're going to get right to it, right? We got my man Jesse Weber up here, right? Now, we're going to talk about the making of an FBI informant, a.k.a. a rat bastard. Was Diddy one of those? Y'all put in the comments what you think, but make sure you watch this program to the end so you can see the making of a rat bastard, a.k.a. FBI informant. Sit back, pay attention. Let's get this thing moving. Let's see what Jesse Weber got to talk about.
When it comes to Sean Diddy Combs, there's been a question that has been circulating. Actually, I think it really goes back to a few weeks ago when Combs was arrested and charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, transportation to engage in prostitution. And this was when Damian Williams, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, held a press conference, and he was asked this question, and it kind of gets you thinking about something.
The indictment describes aggressive, open, violent, hedonistic abuse that you say was recurrent and widely known. Why did it take law enforcement so long to intervene? How many women were victimized by Sean Combs, and how many others were involved?
Look, our investigation is ongoing. We are committed to bringing justice to everyone who's been victimized by the defendant. I can't tell you why it took so long. I think the better focus is on the fact that we are here today.
In other words, forget about we screwed up. Forget about we let him run amok, you know? Let's just focus on where we at today, that we finally got the bang, bang. All right.
Why now? Why is Combs arrested and charged now? If this was going on for so long, and when I say this, prosecutors allege that Combs was running a criminal enterprise that engaged in violent crimes like arson, kidnapping, sex trafficking, bribery, obstruction, that he himself engaged in a campaign of abusing women, that this all culminated in coerced, drug-fueled sexual performances with male sex workers. This is known as freak-offs. So if all of this is true, as the government alleges, and this was going on for years, why only now is Combs being prosecuted?
Like I've been telling you, it's because he bit the hand that fed him. The liquor company contributed to him becoming a billionaire. Then he went up against the very hand that fed him. And now they took that Teflon cloak off of him and threw him to the wolves so they could treat him like a regular trigger. All right.
Could it be no one spoke out? Maybe. Could it be that it had to take all of these sexual assault lawsuits to be filed for prosecutors to finally get wind of what was allegedly going on? Maybe. I mean, remember, did we, the everyday people, know about any of these allegations until Cassandra Ventura, Combs' ex-girlfriend, filed her first bombshell lawsuit against Combs back in November of 2023?
Right there, he should have settled without letting her file it because he waited less than 24 hours. So what was the sense in playing hardball if you're going to surrender in less than 24 hours? Come on, Diddy.
Alleging that she was sex trafficked and enslaved by him. That was the first time I ever heard of a freak off. So was it that? Was it the lawsuits that started all of this? Or, and this is what I want to focus on, is the reason that Sean Combs was not prosecuted before because maybe he was protected by the government? Is it possible that Sean Diddy Combs, the rapper, producer, entertainment and music mogul, businessman, multi-millionaire, was he actually an FBI informant?
Yeah, check, right? They playing a lot of games. That's why I like to break this down so y'all could understand. They know for a fact, right? Not no speculation, for a fact. The FBI wasn't even thinking about him. Once he bucked the liquor company, then P D came out, got arrested for Tupac Shakur's unaliving. And then Cassie's lawsuit came with a lot of information. And then Little Rod's indictment, lawsuit, came out. Because they wrote up the lawsuit like an indictment and they just presented to the court and told the FBI, here's your copy, do what you do, you know? And now that strengthens their case because while he's bucking, not paying, these lawsuits, they're going to be exposing the trial and the trial is going to come out. And if he's found guilty, then now they got him on the SA lawsuits. So this is all a ploy to get the bag. Here it is, a man in America made it to a billionaire status. And all he had to do was keep quiet and lay under the radar. But he's throwing parties. He's jet setting on his private yachts. He got the private planes, the $68 million yacht that he's jet setting across the Caribbean and Mediterranean and anywhere he want to go. Now he's sitting in a jail cell looking at the four walls close in on him, watching the paint dry. Check, right? Let's get back to this, man. They know him. They took the cloak off him and threw him to the wolves.
Process that for a second. I want you to stay with me as you process that. So why am I saying this? Well, other than the fact that it's a fair question, again, taking all these allegations as true, why is the government only coming after him now? And of course, Combs, very connected to influential people in business, entertainment, politics. You would imagine that he could be a useful source of information, right? It's not outside the realm of possibility that you might want someone who has these connections to provide information about alleged illegal operations or any kind of information that might be important for the FBI. You can understand maybe why he would sit in that position, but I didn't come up with this theory myself. No, I want to go back to something that Suge Knight recently said. Yes, Suge Knight, the founder of Death Row Records, longtime rival of Sean Combs, the former record executive who currently sits behind bars on a 28-year prison sentence for manslaughter. He said something on his podcast, the podcast called Collect Call with Suge Knight, and I want to highlight it. This is what he said a few months ago. Quote, "It's a lot of things that people been knowing and everybody gets judged differently. It shouldn't be a gray area when it comes to doing something right, doing something positive, or doing something for the community. That being said, naturally, Puffy been an FBI informant forever, as they would say. That's why it's different when it comes to him. Regardless of who gets hurt, all everybody been saying is Puffy, Puffy, Puffy. I think they shouldn't all blame everything on Puffy. His exes in the industry knew about it. Everybody in his crew knew about it. The bees he dates knew about it. Everybody knew about it. So don't push away from it now." So could that be true? Is this maybe just the words of a Combs rival who's merely speculating? Or if that is true, then what does that mean for Sean Combs? Was he really an FBI informant? Why prosecute him now? And this is a theory, by the way, that if you go on social media, has gotten some interest. By the way, as we're sorting out what do we really know about Sean Combs, what do we really know about his past, have you thought How well do I really know the people in my life? Scary thing to think about, right? Well, this is why we have this sponsor, Truthfinder. Awesome service. This may help you out because whether it's new dates, people you meet online, Truthfinder is one of...
We don't need to hear all that. Let's get over here. Let's get over here real quick, right? Let's get over here until that's done. Now, they're promoting something that I'm not getting paid for, so I'm not going to show it. But I want y'all to know that we're delving into if Diddy is a paid FBI informant. Now, we're going to have the former FBI director break down the making of, one of these guys.
I want to bring in Chris Swecker, attorney and former FBI assistant director. So he's going to know best the answer to this question. Chris, so good to see you. Thanks for coming here on Sidebar. Before we even get to Sean Combs, generally speaking, how does it work recruiting and maintaining an FBI informant?
Developing informants and sources is probably one of the most important parts of being an investigator, a federal investigator, an FBI agent in general. And they tell you at the FBI Academy, you're only as good as the information you can develop through, not just informants, but it's a big part of it because, you can do wiretaps, you can do other types of electronic surveillance, physical surveillance, and that sort of thing. But there's nothing like having someone on the inside who knows the playbook. And that's what an informant is. Now, an informant in the FBI definition is someone who gives information and you have given them a promise of confidentiality.
Okay, that's in the FBI playbook. In the hood, that's just simply a rat bastard. Let's get that straight. When you're in the hood and you're telling on your comrades and working with the opposition, because these are the very men that you ran from. These are the very men that you tried to commit the crime around. Then when they corner you, you decide to be a rat bastard. Not the fancy term that they're using. Let's get that right.
Except in certain circumstances. For example, if they commit crimes. A cooperating witness is a different type of source. A cooperating witness is someone who gives you information discreetly, but the understanding is that there's a high likelihood that they will testify at some point at the end of the line when a prosecution takes place.
Now, that's what we were just dealing with, right? We had little Woody that was given information for, a decade, right? Never thinking that he'll have to go testify. That's what they call a CI, a.k.a. confidential informant. They tell them a whole bunch of things what everybody else is doing. They put together cases, go lock up a whole bunch of people. They get the pat on the back for bringing down these cases when the whole time it was the rat bastard that solved the case. But then now they call it a CI and give it these fancy names. Look how he try and really dress up a rat bastard. It's so funny to me.
These are two very different things, but they're also both well documented within the FBI. You have to vet the sources, the informants. You have to go through a suitability inquiry for 90 days, which means they're not, it's like a probationary period. And there's a whole bunch of other restrictions around how they operate.
Yo, you see that? He said they got to vet them. In other words, everything little Woody said on the stand and the other YSL witnesses that flipped and became rat bastards and testified against Young Thug, they was supposed to be vetted. Obviously, in the state, they don't follow the federal protocol, so they didn't vet them. Vet them means to check their background and their information to make sure everything coincides and is what they call corroborated. Corroboration. They didn't check none of that. That's why that YSL trial is such a mess,
How does it work getting information from the informant? Do they communicate with the FBI through a secure phone? You meet at a secluded location? Again, this is kind of leading into, if we're talking about Combs as a potential FBI informant, how would somebody meet with the FBI to disclose that information?
Well, there's no one size fits all on that. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on
the rat bastard and how you go about dealing with this rat bastard. So you can't use the one playbook for every rat. You got gangster rats. You know what I mean? You got soft rats. You got, incognito rats. And that's why they all get gunshots. Sorry for getting so much gunshots, but this is a rat bastard episode showing you the making of a rat. And you already know what they get when you on the street. Not promoting violence, but just giving you the information. All right, let's get back to this, man.
The situation that informant is in primarily. So some of them, I had informants I could meet in the car at designated locations. We could meet at a hotel at certain times. You could just meet, even at their house, if the circumstances were right for that. But when they're deeply embedded.
Hey, yo, could you imagine an FBI agent coming to your house to sit down to have milk, cookies, and dinner, and you sitting here turning over information that'll get another man life in prison? What do you guys call that? What do you call that type of guy? I call him a rat bastard. You tell me what you call him. I'm just asking. Let's see where y'all at.
In, say, an organized crime group or a drug cartel or their own criminal enterprise, if you will. You want to be obviously very, very, very discreet. And so that's the way most of the time I operated. I always wanted to meet somewhere out of the way, sometimes by phone. Sometimes you would give them a burner phone or an email, a dead email Dropbox, that sort of thing. There's any
Yo, he sound like he buying SEX on the low, don't he?
number of methods.
So with that in mind, you heard what Suge Knight had to say. Would it make sense to you to have someone as high profile as Sean Combs be an FBI informant? And I guess the other question is, for what purpose?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if the FBI thought that Sean Combs had the ability to give them information on someone more important than him in the criminal world, and was mixed up in a criminal environment with criminal enterprises that the FBI really wanted to get information on, it's possible that they could open him up as an informant. I have my doubts because this information is coming from an avowed enemy of Combs, not to defend Combs in any way, but I have my doubts that the FBI, that he would have anything about anybody that was higher up the food chain than himself. Now, it's possible, and it will be well documented, since he is engaged in criminal activity and he's been charged, then it's fair game for the other side, Combs's side, to get that information out. And what they would do is use it as a defense. Well, the FBI knew what I was doing. The FBI authorized it, which they can do. The FBI can.
Yeah, in other words, they saying that Diddy could just straight tell on the FBI and say, man, they knew I've been having freak-offs. The director been to my freak-offs. They all been to my freak-offs. Now they're acting like it's a crime when they allowed me to do this and participated with me. Man, I got tapes on everybody. Next thing you know, he's unalived. But Jeffrey Epstein. Be careful, Diddy. You in a tight spot, big bro. You in a tightest spot than you ever been in before. Let's ride.
Can actually authorize criminal activity. It has to be signed off on at the highest levels. I signed off on it from time to time for organized crime informants, for example. But you can't, it can't be violent crimes. There are only certain types of crimes, criminal activity, that you can authorize.
Yo, hold up. Did you hear what he just said? Tell me what I want y'all to do, right? Because y'all been watching my program. So let's talk about, Little Woody. Let's talk about Monk Tongue. Not putting them out there, but just use that example. These brothers went up there in the YSL trial talking about shooting it, shooting that, robbed it, or choppers, everything under the sun. And they signed off on them and allowed them to do. You know how many victims wouldn't have been victims or may still have been alive if they would have took them off the streets from back then when they had this information, instead of saying, we want Young Thug, we're going to leave you out here. Just get information on Young Thug. And they dragged it out as far as they could until Fannie Willis said, nah, it's time, it's love. Get this, put all the information together. You've been working on this a decade. Show me where our, state funds been going. Where you at with this investigation, with this YSL thing? Oh, I'm ready, boss. I'm ready, boss. You know what I mean? Knowing she wasn't ready. When all she had to do was saying, y'all, dude been telling us a whole lot of crap that don't add up to nothing, and I don't know what nothing is, because I ain't never had nothing, and I never seen nothing like this. That's what she had to say. But instead, she took her crazy ass to trial with that crazy case.
So, but I think if it is in fact the truth, I think his because he's facing so much time, the stigma of being an informant is not going to outweigh his need to use that information as a defense.
Let me just amplify that. In other words, you wouldn't have signed off on him sex trafficking people or violently abusing women for years. These are not things that you would have signed off on as long as he's providing incredibly useful information.
Absolutely not. And if in fact they did, that would be, I would say almost criminal negligence on the part of whoever authorized it.
But I guess the question is, and why Suge Knight said this and why you might see the conversation, if the prosecutors are accurate, and this has been going on for years, why is he only being prosecuted now? Is it the possibility that they had no idea this was going on? Is it the possibility that it had to take the people who filed these civil lawsuits for federal prosecutors to see that something was coming forward, that they had cooperating witnesses? Or is it, yeah, we knew exactly what he was up to for so long, we looked a blind eye because he was providing us very useful information? That's, again, becomes a really important question.
See, what happened there, right? What they saying, so you understand. They say that, did the FBI let him get away with it because he was giving them good information, or was it that he was protected under the Teflon cloak because he was making the movie company, the liquor company, billions of dollars? You tell me, you know what I mean? Do you think it was because the liquor company had him under their Teflon cloak to protect him? Or do you think that he was just a rat bastard? Y'all tell me, put it in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly precedents for this, and Epstein comes to mind very quickly, and others, where Hollywood, embedded inside Hollywood, is that understanding that we know what he's doing, but we're not, they're complicit in some ways, they're enablers in many ways. This person is very wealthy, very powerful, and nobody wants to risk going up against that person until a brave victim or victims finally start to come forward, and then there's a cumulative effect to that, where other victims they get encouraged and they get inspired by someone else coming forward, so they begin to come forward, and the investigative agencies begin to really dig because they now have some witnesses and some private attorney has done their work for them.
And look, it's a fair, as some people.
You know what he said? Some attorney did the work for him. Round of applause to Mr. Blackburn. Round of applause to Mr. Blackburn. All right, calm down. Round of applause to Mr. Blackburn, because he put it all together, the tight package. That's what they were just talking about. Pay attention.
People would look at this conversation and say, this is incredibly ridiculous, this is far-fetched. On the other hand, look, he has access to a lot of high-profile people, business leaders, people in politics. That's why, this question has come up, and whether or not he could provide any useful information. Were there examples, though, where you had an informant, somebody who crossed the line, and at that point it became, even though they're a valuable asset, we have to prosecute them and we have to refer this to other authorities. They've just crossed the line?
Yeah, there are examples of that. I mean, the most high-profile one being Whitey Bulger up in Boston, who was snitching off the Italian mob.
And you remember how it turned out for Whitey Bulger. Let's not forget, You remember how it turned out for Whitey Bulger, Hazleton, beating the head with a lock in the sock. We ain't got to rehash that. You know what happened to rat bastards when they hit the penitentiary. Big shout out to Hazleton.
While he was, actively at the head of the Irish mob in Boston. So, that's a very egregious example. But there are many, many others. It happens, but it doesn't happen when the agents that are operating, if they're in fact operating someone like this as an informant, if the hierarchy, all the way from the agent through the supervisor to the leadership, are paying attention. In the case of Bulger, they were not. In other cases, they were not. And using informants as a two-edged sword, it can be helpful. It can make cases against very high-level people and organized criminal enterprises, cartels, et cetera. But when when that informant begins to cross that line, and we have seen it, especially in the Bulger case, where agents want the accolades, they want the gravitas that comes with operating a high-level, top echelon, as we call them, informant. And then they turn their supervisors. They're so productive that they just look the other way. I doubt if Combs was productive in the context that I just used it, but stranger things have happened.
Let me ask you this: would we ever know? Would we ever know that he was an FBI informant?
They will protect it, but if he really was an informant, they could protect it for a while. But if this case actually goes to trial, or if it goes down the road towards a prosecution and Combs does not plead out, then he has every right to bring that information forward, because it is exculpatory. It's actually in his favor for him to say, hey, the government authorized my activities, the government knew what I was doing. And if in fact he is a source, he's going to have to out himself. And there's no legal way, and I emphasize the word legal, there's no legal way that the FBI and the Justice Department can protect that. And I'm not saying they won't circle the wagons and try. And if it doesn't go to prosecution, I don't think anybody's going to get it through the Freedom of Information Act, which would be the only other way to do it. It hasn't come out in the civil suits yet. And again, they could subpoena this information in a civil suit. But unless there's a criminal prosecution where he pleads this as a defense, I doubt we'll see whether he was.
Well, before I let you go, real quick, would prosecutors know it? Would there ever be an example where the FBI would keep from prosecutors that this was an FBI informant, unless, of course, like you said, he comes forward and says, let me tell you what happened? Would there ever be an example where the FBI wouldn't tell federal or state prosecutors about this relationship?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. The FBI would, if it was what we call an informant versus a cooperating witness, they could and would conceal that from a prosecutor. Again, they can't do it legally if it's such an integral part of the crimes that were committed, that due process requires that they out that information. But the FBI has withheld that information for prosecutors in the past.
Chris Swecker, what an interesting conversation to have. Let's keep the conversation going as new developments happen in the Sean Combs case. Really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much for coming here on Sidebar.
All right, so that's where we at, man. You know what I mean? So we dealing with if Diddy is a rat bastard. We didn't get the gunshots. Gotta give gunshots when you say rat bastard. If you don't give gunshots when you say rat bastard, it don't count. All right? Now, this is where we at. We done broke it down so you understand the making of a rat bastard. Just so you know. Cop the book of Rowan Harlem. It's on the screen. You know what time it is. Cash App on the screen. Hit the logo. Make sure it say it was created in 2020. Follow me on Instagram at unique Mecca Audio, the same name as this channel. Let's tap out.
Cheers, cheers, the crime. Mecca Audio.
can of 26. He back on the strip, getting back in the mix. What he mentions a gift. You stand up 10 toes down, and I suggest you pay attention to this. Take a little gully posse and put it in Harlem. He cut from the bottom, came up from the bottom. Drop the book, you should go and get it. The Instagram page and the YouTube, you could go and visit. Then you could consider yourself LinkedIn. Sit front row and get Jews from a kingpin. How he went through it, so you ain't gotta go do it. To not pay attention would be stupid. Talking about a man that probably put your grandfather on. Probably the reason that him and your grams got along. A man that generated millions on the block, did his time, never squilling to the cops, Mecca audio. Get it live like 2 G's in the 90s. Drop top beamer so shiny. I let shorty go, she was whining. Treat her like my past, she behind me. Spend a couple bands on the Dapper Dan. You be back again, getting green like a Packers fan. No cap, it's a roaring uptown. They be horn uptown, Dominican bust downs. Now we on the positive, we got a lot to give. Now you trying to stop the kids from being inoperative. So take heed, homie, lend an ear. He started in uptown, he gon' finish there. But now it ain't about selling drugs, buying cars. It's about buying property to make the community ours, so we can give back to the